Welcome to the DOGE Diaries, diving deep into government efficiency. So this Department of Government Efficiency, right? DOGE. It's supposed to be shaking things up.
Yeah, big promises. Trim the fat, cut the waste, Musk and Ramaswamy leading the charge. Sounds like a headline grabber, right?
Totally. But how much can they really achieve? I mean, they're aiming for what, $2 trillion in savings? That's ambitious, to say the least. $2 trillion.
500 billion in unauthorized funds. Where did that number come from? It's like pulling numbers out of thin air.
Exactly. And they're not even part of the government, right? Just advisors. So how much actual power do they have?
Well, they've got the House Oversight Committee, especially Comer and Green, chomping at the bit to help. That's got to count for something, yeah?
Sure, but think about the pushback. The bureaucracy, the special interests, they're not going to just roll over, are they?
Not a chance. And let's be real, Musk and Ramaswamy, brilliant guys, but government experience, not so much. It's a whole different beast. A very different beast.
Totally. They might find themselves in over their heads. Plus, cutting the fat can sometimes mean cutting into essential services, right? There's a delicate balance.
Absolutely. So yeah, big goals, lots of hype, but the devil's in the details, isn't it? We'll have to see how this plays out. And what about this file issue? A simple TXT file. It's just text, right?
Yeah, plain text. No formatting, no images, just words. Super basic, but incredibly compatible. Any system can open it.
So the extension .txt, it's just a convention. You could even call it .text, right?
Pretty much. It's all about signaling what's inside. Plain, simple text. Kind of the opposite of what we're talking about with DOGE, huh? Simple versus incredibly complex.
Ha! Good point. From simple text files to the tangled web of government. Quite the leap. So back to DOGE. This whole thing hinges on Congress, right? They hold the purse strings.
They hold the power, right? If Congress doesn't buy in, this whole DOGE thing goes nowhere. Fast.
Exactly. It all comes down to appropriations. And with the current political climate, it's going to be a battle.
Total gridlock. But, going back to that TXT analogy for a sec.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? Something so simple, so universally compatible like a TXT file.
And they're using one, right? For this massive undertaking? A TXT file?
Yeah, apparently. Which is wild, considering, well, everything. But it kind of makes sense. Like the most basic, stripped-down way to share information. Anyone can access it, regardless of their system.
So maximum compatibility, lowest common denominator almost. Ironic, given the complexity of what they're trying to achieve.
Totally ironic, like using a bicycle to tow a jumbo jet. But hey, it works. Everyone can open a TXT file. No special software needed.
Right, just plain text, words, no fancy formatting, no bells and whistles, just raw information.
Which, I guess, is kind of the point they're trying to make with DOGE, isn't it? Cutting back to the basics, getting rid of the bloat.
Maybe, but government isn't a text file. It's way more complicated. There are layers upon layers of everything. It's not just words on a page.
True, and those layers exist for a reason, right? Sometimes complexity is necessary. It's not all bloat.
Exactly. Cutting the fat can sometimes mean cutting into essential services, vital programs. There's a fine line, and finding that balance, that's the real challenge.
So we were talking about DOGE using a simple TXT file, right, for all their data? It's almost quaint.
It is, especially given the sheer scale of what they're tackling. Dismantling bureaucracy, restructuring federal agencies, that's not exactly a weekend project.
Yeah, talk about a David and Goliath situation. A tiny TXT file versus the entire federal government. It's kind of funny, actually.
It is, but I guess the simplicity has its advantages. Universal compatibility, easy access.
Right. Anyone can open it. No special software, no compatibility issues. Just raw data, accessible to everyone, which I suppose fits with their transparency goals.
Makes sense. Sunlight is the best disinfectant and all that. So what exactly are they hoping to achieve with this whole DOGE initiative anyway? Beyond the dramatic pronouncements?
Well, according to the announcement, they're aiming to, and I quote, dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, and cut wasteful expenditures. Big words.
Restructure federal agencies. That's ambitious, to say the least. Where do they even begin?
Apparently, their initial targets include the Department of Defense, the DOD. That's a big one.
Huge. Talk about a bureaucratic behemoth. I mean, Musk and Ramaswamy are smart guys, but taking on the Pentagon? That's a whole different level.
It is. And they're not even officially part of the government, right? They're just advisors. So how much power do they actually have?
Good question. A lot of influence, certainly, but actual authority? That remains to be seen. It all comes down to Congress, doesn't it? They hold the purse strings and the power.
So 2 trillion. That number keeps echoing in my head. It's just astronomical. How can they realistically
Find that much waste, right? It's almost like they're saying the government is just throwing money away. 500 billion in unauthorized funds. Where is that coming from?
Yeah, and the thing is, they're not even in the government. Advisors, outside looking in. Like, how much can they actually do?
Influence, maybe? They've definitely got the ear of some powerful people. That House Oversight Committee connection is huge, especially with Comer and Green involved.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Green's definitely forceful, but still, think about the entrenched interests, the bureaucracy. They're not going to give up without a fight.
No way, they'll dig their heels in. And, Musk and Ramaswamy, brilliant, sure, but government experience, zero. It's a different world.
Right? A whole other ballgame. This methodology, working outside the formal structure, it's almost like they're trying to hack the system from the outside.
Hack the system? I like that. Using public pressure, working with Congress, it's a different approach, that's for sure.
But it all hinges on Congress, doesn't it? If they don't buy in, this whole thing collapses, like a house of cards. No statutory authority, right?
Exactly. They can advise all they want, but the real power lies with Congress. They control the purse strings. They make the laws. DOGE can highlight wasteful spending, but
without Congress, they're toothless. Just barking dogs, no bite.
good analogy. Barking dogs, lots of noise, but can they actually enact change? That's the million, or should I say trillion-dollar question.
So, 2 trillion in savings. Trillion. It just boggles the mind, doesn't it? I mean, where do they even begin to find that kind of waste?
Right? It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, a $2 trillion needle. And this whole unauthorized funds thing, 500 billion, sounds made up, frankly.
Well, let's be fair. Governments are notoriously complex. Layers upon layers of stuff. It's not unreasonable to think there's waste hidden in there. Somewhere, right?
Sure, but 500 billion? Come on, that's a whole lot of waste. And this idea of just dismantling bureaucracy, it's not that simple. These systems, complex as they are, exist for a reason, don't they?
I mean, yes, some of it's essential, obviously. Social safety nets, vital programs. You can't just slash and burn everything. There's got to be a balance.
Exactly. It's not like a text file where you can just delete a few lines and call it a day. This is people's lives we're talking about. Real-world consequences. What happens when those efficiency cuts hit essential services?
Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it? Cutting into the bone, not just the fat. There's a real risk there. This whole DOGE initiative seems kinda reckless, right?
Reckless? Maybe. Naive? Definitely. They talk about dismantling government bureaucracy like it's some kind of weekend project. This is the federal government we're talking about. It's a behemoth, a tangled web of everything.
And Musk and Ramaswamy, brilliant as they are, government experience? Zero. Zilch. Nada. They're outsiders looking in. Do they even understand how this all works?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or in this case, the $2 trillion question. They've got big ideas, sure, but navigating the political landscape, the legal complexities, the entrenched interests, that's a whole other ballgame. They might be in over their heads.
So, 2 trillion in savings. Still hard to wrap my head around it. I mean, even if there is that much waste, how do they even find it? It's like searching for a grain of sand on a beach, right?
Yeah, it's a monumental task. But look, there are ways to improve government efficiency. It's not all smoke and mirrors. Technology, for instance, automating processes, better data management.
Oh, absolutely. Streamlining things, getting rid of the paper pushing, huge potential there. And what about performance measurement? Setting clear goals, tracking progress.
Yeah, accountability is key. Knowing what works, what doesn't, that's crucial. Data-driven decision-making, that's the future of government, right?
Totally. Evidence-based policy. And sometimes you got to tear the whole thing down and start over. Process reengineering, right? Redesigning workflows, eliminating redundancies.
Yeah, like starting with a blank slate. A clean TXT file almost. Just the essentials.
Ha! Good one. But seriously, that can be incredibly effective. And what about investing in people, employee training, professional development?
Right. Equipping people with the skills they need, empowering them to be more effective. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. And don't forget citizen engagement, getting the public involved.
Oh, for sure. Making sure the government actually serves the people. Transparency, accountability, it all ties together, doesn't it? It's a holistic approach, really, not just about cutting costs, but about
building a better system, one that's efficient, effective, and responsive to the needs of the people. Long-term, sustainable change. That's the key.
yeah, not just a quick fix, but a real fundamental shift. So, okay, 2 trillion. Maybe, just maybe, if they get all these pieces right, if they really commit to a long-term strategy.
It's a long shot for sure, a moonshot even. But hey, stranger things have happened, right? It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Definitely a story worth following.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode of the DOGE Diaries. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep those Doges close. Bye for now.
See you next time.